I always thought betrayal would feel like a sudden punch to the gut. Instead, it crept up slowly, wrapping around my throat like a silk scarf until I couldn't breathe. The day I caught them together, I wasn't even supposed to be home. My name is Ivy, and I was supposed to be picking out flower arrangements for my wedding. But a migraine had forced me to reschedule, and I returned to find my sister Sophie's car in our driveway. Strange, since she should have been at work. The front door was unlocked. I heard giggling from upstairs, my bedroom. My feet felt heavy as I climbed each step, my heart already knowing what my mind refused to accept. "Jamie." Sophie's voice drifted through the crack in the door. "We should tell her soon." "I know, baby. After the wedding, okay? We'll figure it out." My hand trembled as I pushed the door open. There they were, my fiancé and my sister, tangled in my sheets. The same sheets Jamie and I had picked out together at Bed Bath & Beyond last month. "Ivy!" Sophie scrambled to cover herself, but Jamie just sat there, frozen. "Oh God, this isn't... we were going to..." "Going to what?" My voice sounded foreign, eerily calm. "Wait until after the wedding to tell me you've been sleeping with my fiancé." Jamie finally found his voice. "Ivy, please! We didn't mean for this to happen, it just... did." I laughed. Actually laughed. "How long?" Sophie started crying. 3 months, and I'm pregnant." The room spun. 3 months. While I'd been planning our wedding, picking out china patterns and writing my vows, they'd been planning their own future. "Get out," I whispered. When neither moved, I grabbed Jamie's clothes from the floor and threw them at him. "Get out!" They dressed quickly, Sophie sobbing the entire time. I stood in the doorway, blocking their exit. "The ring." Jamie blinked. "What?" "The engagement ring. Give it back." He slipped it off my finger, his touch making my skin crawl. As they shuffled past me, Sophie reached for my arm. "Ivy, please, we need to talk about this." I jerked away. "Don't touch me, ever again." The next few days passed in a blur. My mother called constantly, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly frustrated. "Ivy, you need to come home. Sophie's devastated. She needs her sister right now." I finally answered on the 4th day. "She needs me? Are you serious?" "Sweetheart, these things happen. Sophie and Jamie. They're in love, real love, and with the baby coming..." "Stop," my voice cracked. "Just stop. We're having a family dinner tonight," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Everyone will be there. We need to discuss the situation like adults." I showed up against my better judgment. The dining room felt suffocating. Sophie and Jamie sitting together, my mother hovering anxiously, my father staring at his plate. "We're getting married next month," Sophie announced, her hand protectively over her stomach. "A small ceremony, nothing fancy." My mother beamed. "Isn't it wonderful? You'll be an aunt, Ivy." I stood up so quickly my chair toppled backward. "Wonderful. My sister sleeps with my fiancé, gets pregnant, and that's wonderful." "Now, Ivy," my father finally spoke, "what's done is done. We need to move forward as a family." "A family?" I grabbed my purse. "You want to know what family does? Family protects each other. Family doesn't steal your happiness and expect you to celebrate their betrayal." Sophie started crying again. She'd always been good at that. "Please, Ivy, I love him. We love each other." I looked at them all. My sister's tears, Jamie's guilty face, my parents' pleading eyes. In that moment, something inside me hardened. They wanted me to forgive and forget, to play the supportive sister and daughter. Instead, I walked to the door, pausing only to say, "Congratulations on your perfect little family. I hope you're all very happy together." As I drove away, my phone buzzed with messages I wouldn't read. They thought this was the end, poor Ivy, running away to lick her wounds. But they were wrong. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I pulled into my best friend Eric's driveway, my hand steady on the wheel for the first time in days. He opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "I need your help," I whispered against his shoulder. Anything. I want to buy a house. I pulled back to meet his confused gaze. Their dream house, specifically, and I know exactly how to do it. 6 months can change everything. I sat in Craig's office, watching him review the quarterly reports I'd prepared. My mentor's eyebrows rose higher with each page. Ivy, these numbers are exceptional. He set down the papers. You've doubled your client portfolio since spring. I smiled, thinking of the sleepless nights and endless coffee runs that had gotten me here. Thank you. I've been focused. Focused is an understatement. The board's noticed. There's talk of a promotion. My phone buzzed. Another ignored text from Sophie. I switched it to silent without looking. Speaking of focus, Craig leaned forward. How's the house hunting going? Actually, I'm closing on a property next week. I tried to keep my voice neutral. The Victorian on Maple Grove. Craig whistled. That's quite a purchase for a first-time buyer. You sure about this? More than anything. After work, I met Eric at our usual coffee shop. He was already there, laptop open, real estate documents spread across the table. The sellers accepted your offer, he said without preamble. But there's something else. Look at this. He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was Sophie's social media post. Can't wait to start our new chapter. Dream home. Baby on the way. Below was a photo of her and Jamie in front of the same Victorian house I was about to own. They don't know, I said, sipping my coffee. They think they're getting it. Ivy. Eric ran a hand through his hair. Are you absolutely sure about this? Once you sign those papers... They're meeting the realtor tomorrow, I cut in, to make their offer. An offer they can't afford, by the way. I've seen Jamie's financials. How did you... Denise in accounting. She owed me a favor. Eric closed his laptop. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Almost. I pulled out my phone, showing him the invitation I'd just received. Sophie's having a housewarming party next month, for a house she doesn't own yet. My phone rang. My mother this time. I declined the call. They're going to hate you for this, Eric said quietly. They already do. They just pretend they don't. The next week passed in a blur of signatures and legal documents. I sat in my lawyer's office, pen hovering over the final paper. Once you sign, she said, the house is yours. All renovations and modifications will be at your discretion. I signed. Walking out, I bumped into Denise from work. Hey, I was just heading to your office. Did you hear about Sophie and Jamie? My stomach tightened. What about them? Their loan application was denied. They're devastated. Sophie's been crying all over Facebook about losing their dream home. I forced a sympathetic frown. That's terrible. I know, and with the baby coming... Denise lowered her voice. Your mom called the office looking for you. Said Sophie really needs her sister right now. I'm sure she does. Back at my desk, I opened my email to find the contractor's quote for renovations. The amount would barely dent my savings. Unlike Sophie and Jamie, I'd been smart with my money. My phone lit up with a text from Eliana. Family dinner tonight. Please come. They're announcing the baby's gender. I typed back, can't. Working late. You can't avoid them forever, she replied. Watch me. That evening, I stood in front of my new house. My house. The porch needed work, the paint was peeling, but it was mine. All mine. Eric pulled up in his car. Thought I'd find you here. Just imagining the possibilities. I turned to him. Want to see inside? We walked through empty rooms that echoed with our footsteps. Sophie and Jamie had planned their whole future here. The nursery upstairs, the kitchen remodel, the garden parties. When are you telling them? Eric asked. Soon. I walked to the bay window, the one Sophie had gushed about on social media. They're having a girl, you know, found out today. Ivy. Don't. I pressed my hand against the cool glass. Don't make me feel guilty about this. They didn't feel guilty about what they did to me. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. It was Sophie's housewarming invitation, sent to the entire family group chat. Join us in celebrating our new home. Can't wait to share this special moment with everyone we love. Eric read over my shoulder. She still doesn't know. No. I smiled, remembering the renovation schedule I'd just approved. But she will. Very soon. I took one last look around what would have been their dream home. In 30 days, the contractors would arrive. In 31 days, Sophie and Jamie would realize exactly what they'd lost. And I would be there to watch it all unfold. "You're different lately," Denise said, studying me over lunch. "Calmer, almost scary calm." I stirred my salad, watching lettuce leaves swirl like tiny green boats. "I'm just focused on work." "Please, you're plotting something." She leaned closer. "Spill." Before I could respond, Sophie walked into the restaurant, her baby bump now obvious under her flowing dress. I ducked behind my menu, but it was too late. "Ivy," she waddled over, Jamie trailing behind her. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I've been busy." I kept my voice light, professional. The restaurant was full of my colleagues. "Congratulations on the gender reveal." "You'd know more if you'd come to family dinners." Sophie pulled up a chair uninvited. "We miss you." Jamie stood awkwardly beside her. "Hey, Ivy." I ignored him, gathering my things. "Sorry, I have a meeting." "Wait." Sophie grabbed my arm. "The housewarming party. You're coming, right? We found another house, even better than the Victorian. Everything happens for a reason, you know." I met her eyes. "Does it?" "Of course, like me and Jamie. Sometimes the universe knows better than we do." Denise choked on her water. "The universe." I stood up. "Right. Well, I wouldn't miss your housewarming for anything." Outside, Denise caught up with me. "Okay, what was that? You looked like you were about to either cry or commit murder." "Neither." I checked my phone, an email from the contractors confirming next week's start date. "I'm just giving the universe a little help." Back at the office, Eric was waiting by my desk. Emergency best friend meeting. Now. He dragged me to the stairwell, our usual spot for private conversations. "I just overheard Jamie on the phone. He's in trouble, Ivy. Big trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "Gambling debts. He's been betting on sports games, losing big. That's why they couldn't get the house loan." I leaned against the wall. "Does Sophie know?" "No. He's telling everyone they chose a different house because it's better for the baby." Eric ran a hand through his hair. "This changes things, right?" "Changes what?" "Your plan. I mean, they're already suffering. Maybe that's enough." I thought about my mother's voice messages, all about how Sophie needed support, how blessed they were, how I needed to move on. About Jamie's hand on my sister's stomach at the restaurant, the same hand that used to hold mine. "No," I said, "it's not enough." That night, I drove past their current apartment. The lights were on, shadows moving behind curtains. They looked happy, normal, like they hadn't destroyed someone else's life to build their own. My phone rang. Eliana. "Before you say no," she said when I answered, "hear me out. Family brunch, Sunday, just you and me." And, okay, yes, Sophie and your mom will be there. But so will I, running interference. Please, I hate being stuck between everyone." I sighed. "Fine, 1 hour." Sunday arrived too quickly. I walked into the cafe to find Sophie already crying. "These hormones," she sniffled as I sat down. "I'm just so happy you came." My mother beamed. "See, this is what family does. We come together." Eliana caught my eye and mouthed, "Sorry." "So," Sophie wiped her eyes, "the new house is perfect. The owners accepted our offer right away. Jamie says it's meant to be." "When do you move in?" I asked, knowing the answer. 3 weeks, just in time to set up the nursery before I get too big." She pulled out her phone. "Want to see the photos? The previous owners are doing some renovations before we move in." I looked at the pictures, my house, my renovations. "Lovely." "We're thinking of calling her Ivy," Sophie said suddenly, "after you, to show there are no hard feelings." The cafe went silent. Even my mother looked uncomfortable. "No," I said quietly. "You don't get to do that. But you don't get to steal my life and then name your baby after me like it makes everything okay." Sophie's lower lip trembled. "I thought you'd be honored." "Honored?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. "You want to honor me? Try not sleeping with my fiancé next time." "Ivy," my mother hissed, "people are staring." "Let them stare." I grabbed my purse. "I'm done pretending everything's fine." Eliana followed me outside. That was intense. It's about to get more intense. I showed her the contractor's schedule on my phone. They start tomorrow. "The renovation that Sophie thinks the sellers are doing?" "Exactly." She studied me for a long moment. "You know this won't make you feel better, right?" "Maybe not." I watched through the window as Sophie cried on our mother's shoulder. "But it'll make them feel worse." And right then, that was all that mattered. Eliana's birthday party felt like walking into a minefield. The backyard was filled with familiar faces, all pretending not to watch me as I navigated through the crowd. Eric squeezed my hand reassuringly. "We can leave any time," he whispered. "Not yet." I spotted Jamie by the drinks table, checking his phone with a worried expression. "This is getting interesting." Sophie waved from her seat of honor, surrounded by gift bags full of baby items. Trust her to hijack someone else's birthday party. "Ivy, come feel the baby kick." "I'm good." I grabbed a glass of wine, watching Jamie slip away to make another phone call. Eliana appeared beside me. "He's been doing that all afternoon. Sophie thinks he's handling work stuff." "Bookie stuff, more likely," I muttered. "What?" "Nothing." I forced a smile as my mother approached. "Ivy, darling, Sophie's about to open the presents. Come sit with us." "Actually," I raised my voice slightly, "I'd love to hear more about the house, Sophie. The renovations must be almost done." Sophie brightened. "Oh my God, yes. The contractors have been amazing. They're painting the nursery this gorgeous shade of lavender." "Contractors," Jamie interrupted, returning from his call. His face had gone pale. "What contractors? The ones doing the renovations before we move in?" Sophie frowned. "You said the sellers arranged everything." Jamie tugged at his collar. Right, of course." I sipped my wine, watching him squirm. He hadn't arranged anything, couldn't have, since he didn't own the house. I wondered how long he could keep up the lie. "Show everyone the nursery photos," Sophie urged. Jamie's phone rang again. "Sorry, I need to take this." I followed him around the corner of the house, staying just close enough to hear. "I know I'm late on the payment," he hissed into the phone. "The house fell through, okay? But I've got another plan." "No, please, just give me 2 more weeks." "Problems?" I stepped into view. He jumped, ending the call. "Jesus, Ivy, were you spying on me?" "Karma's a funny thing, isn't it?" I leaned against the wall. "One minute you're on top of the world, the next. What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I smiled. "Just thinking about how quickly things can change. Houses slip away, debts pile up." His eyes narrowed. "What do you know?" "I know Sophie would be devastated to learn about your gambling. Almost as devastated as I was when, there you are." Sophie waddled around the corner. "What are you two talking about?" "The house," I said smoothly. "Jamie was just telling me about all the special features. The bay window, the vintage fireplace, the original hardwood floors. Isn't it perfect?" Sophie beamed. "We're so lucky. The master bedroom has this amazing crown molding." "That's being replaced," I cut in. Jamie's head snapped up. "What?" "Oh, you didn't know. The contractors are replacing all the crown molding. And the hardwood floors. And that vintage fireplace. Gone by Thursday." Sophie's face fell. But we chose that house because of those features." "Jamie, you said nothing was being changed." He shot me a panicked look. There must be some mistake." "No mistake." I pulled out my phone, showing them the contractor's latest photos. "See? They're making good progress." "But why would the sellers—" Sophie's voice trailed off as she studied the images. "Wait, that's not—" Jamie, that's not our house. Of course it is, he said quickly. It's just the angle. No, look at the address in the background. She zoomed in on one photo. That's the Victorian we lost. Why do you have renovation photos of a house we don't own? I watched the colour drain from Jamie's face as his house of cards began to collapse. Someone else bought it, he stammered. The loan. We couldn't. Then why are you acting like we're moving in? Sophie's voice rose. Why are there contractors? Why did you let me plan a housewarming party? Other guests were starting to stare. My mother hurried over. What's going on? I'd like to know that too, Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. Jamie? He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked quickly toward his car. Jamie. Sophie tried to follow but stumbled. My mother caught her arm. What did you say to him? My mother demanded. I shrugged. Just the truth, for once. Sophie sank into a nearby chair, one hand on her stomach. I don't understand. We picked out paint colours. We measured for curtains. How could he lie about this? I caught Eric's eye across the yard. He nodded slightly, my cue to leave before the real storm hit. Happy birthday, Eliana, I called out, heading for the gate. Thanks for having me. Behind me, I could hear Sophie's sobs, my mother's soothing murmurs, and the growing whispers of gossip. Phase 1 was complete. Now for the real surprise. The contractor's boots echoed through the empty house as he showed me the progress. We've gutted the master bedroom and nursery as requested. The new fixtures arrive tomorrow. I ran my hand along the exposed beams, all that remained of Sophie's dream nursery. Perfect. And the timeline? We'll be done 2 days before their supposed move-in date. He checked his clipboard. Though I still don't understand why we're renovating exactly what they wanted to keep. Sometimes people don't know what they really want, I said, stepping over a pile of vintage crown molding. Until it's gone. My phone buzzed, Eliana calling. I answered on speaker while examining paint samples. Sophie's a mess, she said without preamble. Jamie finally came clean about the gambling. She's staying with your parents. How much does he owe? Enough that they're selling her engagement ring, the one he gave her after, I selected a deep charcoal for the master bedroom. Sophie hated dark colours. Karma's working overtime. This isn't funny, Ivy. She's pregnant and homeless. She's not homeless. She's at Mum and Dad's, probably being told how none of this is her fault. A crash from upstairs made me jump. The contractor shouted down, Sorry, just removing that built-in bookcase. Where are you? Eliana asked suspiciously. Working late. I hung up before she could ask more questions. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Denise waiting at my desk. You will not believe what I just heard. Try me. Jamie's been embezzling from the company. Small amounts, but it adds up. He thought he could gamble it back before anyone noticed. I set down my coffee. How much? Enough for prison time. She leaned closer. He's cleaning out his desk right now. I walked to the break room, timing it perfectly to refill my cup as Jamie packed his personal items into a cardboard box. Our eyes met across the room. Happy now? He asked quietly. Not yet. I know you're behind this somehow. He stepped closer. The house, the contractors, the audit that caught the missing money. Prove it. His hands clenched around his box. I loved you once, No, I corrected him. You loved what I could give you. Stability, status, a future. Then Sophie offered something more exciting. She needed me. And now, I gestured at his box. Does she still need you? An unemployed gambling addict with possible prison time. Security arrived before he could respond, escorting him out. I watched from my window as he loaded his box into his car, then pulled out my phone to check the contractor's latest update. The Victorian was transforming daily. Gone were the vintage details Sophie had swooned over, replaced by modern fixtures and stark colours. The garden she'd planned to plant was now a concrete patio. Eric texted, Saw Jamie being escorted out. You okay? Better than okay, I replied. Coming to see the house later. Someone should witness your descent into supervillainy. That evening, Eric walked through the renovation with me, shaking his head at each change. You're really going scorched earth with this. They wanted their dream home. I showed him the plans for the industrial-style kitchen, replacing Sophie's hoped-for farmhouse design. Dreams change. Speaking of changes, he pulled out his phone, showing me Sophie's latest social media post. A tearful announcement about postponing the housewarming due to unforeseen circumstances. Unforeseen, I scoffed. She should have seen everything coming the moment she decided to sleep with my fiancé. And what about your parents? They're caught in the crossfire. I remembered my mother's voice messages, all about supporting Sophie, understanding Sophie, forgiving Sophie. They chose their side. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It was Jamie. Please, she's pregnant. Just tell me who bought the house. We can work something out. Still taking calls from your ex? Eric peered over my shoulder. Not for long. I blocked the number, then opened my email to approve the final renovation changes. You know, Eric said carefully, there's still time to stop this. Sell the house, take the profit, start fresh somewhere else. I walked to the bay window, the last original feature left. Tomorrow it would be replaced with floor-to-ceiling modern glass. They took everything from me, I said quietly. My future, my family, my trust. Now I'm taking something back. And after, when the house is done and they're broken, what then? Before I could answer, headlights swept across the window. A familiar car pulled into the driveway. Is that... Eric moved beside me. Sophie stepped out of her car, staring up at the house. My house, with tears streaming down her face. Showtime, I whispered, heading for the door. What are you doing here? I called from the porch, making Sophie jump. Ivy? She squinted through the darkness. Why are you in our house? Your house? I stepped into the light. That's interesting. Show me the deed. Sophie's hand went protectively to her stomach, her default move lately. The sellers never accepted your offer, I finished, because they'd already sold it to someone else. Understanding dawned slowly across her face. No, you didn't. I pulled out my keys, dangling them in the moonlight. Want a tour? She followed me inside, gasping at each renovation. The exposed brick she'd loved was now covered in sleek white paint. The vintage staircase had been replaced with modern floating steps. You're destroying it, she whispered. I'm making it mine. Eric hung back, watching us circle each other like wary cats. Sophie's eyes were red-rimmed, her designer dress wrinkled. Why? Her voice cracked. To hurt me? Why did you sleep with my fiancé? I countered. To hurt me. I loved him. I still love him, even after... She choked back a sob. Did you get him fired too? Jamie got himself fired, just like he got himself into gambling debt. He was trying to buy this house for us. She gestured at the gutted rooms. For our family. Your family? I laughed. You mean the family you built on the ruins of mine? Sophie sank onto a dusty contractor's stool. I never meant to fall in love with him, but you did, and instead of walking away, you took everything. I moved closer. My fiancé, my future, our parents' support. You took it all with a smile, then expected me to celebrate your happiness. Mom and Dad still love you. They tolerate me. They love you. The pregnant daughter, the victim, the one who needs protecting. Eric cleared his throat. Ivy, no. I turned back to Sophie. You want to know the best part? Jamie was planning to sell this house behind your back, to pay his debts. She shook her head. You're lying. Check his phone. Check the messages from his bookie. Ask him about the company money he stole. Sophie's face crumpled. Stop it. The perfect life you stole from me. It's falling apart, and I get to watch. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you chose him over me. A loud crash from upstairs made us all jump. The contractor appeared at the top of the stairs. Sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss the nursery demolition scheduled for tomorrow. Sophie stood up so quickly she stumbled. Eric caught her arm. You're destroying the nursery. Her voice was barely a whisper. "It's my house." I shrugged. "I can do whatever I want with it." She reached for her phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling Mom. Go ahead. Tell her how the sister she thinks is bitter and lonely actually owns your dream home. Tell her how your perfect husband is a thief and a gambler. Tell her everything." Instead of dialing, Sophie sank to the floor, sobbing. Eric shot me a concerned look. "Maybe we should get her out of my house. Good idea." But as I moved to help her up, Sophie grabbed my arm. "Please, we can fix this. All of it. I'll leave Jamie. I'll tell Mom and Dad the truth. Just, please don't take our home." For a moment, I wavered. She looked so small, so broken. My little sister, the one I'd protected since childhood. Then I remembered finding her in my bed with Jamie. Remembered her pregnancy announcement at my cancelled wedding venue. Remembered every family dinner where she played the victim while I was cast as the villain. "You're home." I stepped back. This was supposed to be my home. With Jamie. Before you took that future and made it yours. "Ivy, get out." When she didn't move, I raised my voice. "Get out!" Eric helped her up, guiding her toward the door. She paused in the doorway, one hand on her stomach. "You know what's worse than having something stolen from you?" she asked quietly. "Becoming the kind of person who enjoys stealing from others." The door closed behind them with a final click. I stood in my gutted house, listening to Sophie's car start up and drive away. My phone buzzed, a text from the contractor. "Nursery demolition still on for tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long moment, Sophie's words echoing in my head. Then I typed back, "Proceed as planned." Because some wounds run too deep for mercy. The morning of Sophie's housewarming party dawned bright and clear. I watched from my bedroom window as the bulldozer rolled up the driveway right on schedule. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. First Eric, "Are you sure about this?" Then Eliana, "Sophie's decorating the house right now. She has no idea." Finally my mother, "Please don't do anything foolish today." I didn't respond to any of them. At exactly noon, cars began arriving. I recognized them all. Family, friends, colleagues. Sophie had invited everyone to witness her perfect life. "Ready?" Eric asked, appearing beside me. I straightened my blazer and grabbed the envelope from my desk. "Time to crash a party." We walked across the street just as Sophie was welcoming guests on the front porch. She froze when she saw me. "You're not supposed to be here." "Actually," I smiled, "you're not supposed to be here." The bulldozer's engine roared to life. Sophie spun around, her face draining of color as it approached the pristine front lawn. "What's happening?" My mother pushed through the crowd. "Ivy, what have you done?" I pulled the papers from my envelope. "I'm renovating my property." "Your—" Jamie appeared, looking haggard. "What do you mean, your property?" "She owns it." Eric's voice carried across the suddenly silent gathering. "She bought it months ago." Sophie swayed on her feet. But we signed the papers yesterday. The realtor—" "Show me." I held out my hand. "Show me these papers." Jamie stepped forward. "I have them right here." "No," Sophie interrupted. "You said you had them, but I never saw them. I never actually signed anything, did I?" The bulldozer inched closer to the freshly planted garden. "Jamie," Sophie's voice rose, "did you lie about the papers too?" He backed away. "I can explain." "Explain what?" I pulled out another document. "The gambling debts? The embezzlement? Or how you plan to sell this house, my house, to pay it all off?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. "That's not true," she whispered. "Jamie would never—" "Check his phone," I suggested. "Or better yet, ask his bookie." "He's right there." I pointed to a man hovering at the edge of the gathering, who quickly turned and hurried away. Jamie lunged for his car, but Eric blocked his path. "Running again?" "You did this," Jamie snarled at me. "You set me up." "No." I handed the eviction notice to Sophie. "You did this to yourself, just like you did this to her." Sophie stared at the paper, tears splashing onto the legal text. "All those renovations, You knew, the whole time. I bought this house the day after you announced your pregnancy. I turned to address the stunned crowd. The day I learned my sister and ex-fiancé had been sleeping together for months. Ivy, my mother stepped forward. This is cruel. Cruel, I laughed. Was it cruel when you told me to be happy for them? When you celebrated their betrayal? When you made me the villain for not forgiving them? The bulldozer's blade touched the first flower bed. Sophie screamed, "Stop it, please!" Why should I? I moved closer. You didn't stop when I begged you to, when I asked why my sister would do this to me. I'm sorry. She fell to her knees, sobbing. I'm so sorry, Ivy. Please don't destroy our home. It was never your home, I signaled the bulldozer driver. It was my future you destroyed. Now I'm just returning the favor. Jamie tried to run again, but 2 men in suits blocked his path. James Fletcher. One flashed a badge. We need to discuss some financial discrepancies at your former workplace. As they led Jamie away, Sophie crumpled the eviction notice in her fists. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sophie, don't name your baby after me. She deserves better than that. The crowd parted as I walked away, whispers following in my wake. I heard my mother calling my name, heard Sophie's sobs, heard the bulldozer's engine growling. Eric caught up with me at the sidewalk. Well, that was justified. I was going to say intense. He glanced back at the chaos we'd left behind. Feel better? I watched as my family's perfect facade crumbled, just like the house would soon crumble. Sophie being led away by our parents, Jamie in custody, the party guests fleeing the scene. Ask me tomorrow, I said, and walked away from the ruins of both our dreams. Behind me, the bulldozer began its work. The demolition dust had barely settled when Eliana found me sitting on my front porch, watching the sun set behind the partially destroyed Victorian. Everyone's looking for you, she said, settling beside me. Let them look. She handed me a cup of coffee. Jamie's being held without bail. Sophie's at the hospital. Stress triggered early contractions. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. It felt real, grounding. Did you know, I said, that I used to imagine my whole life in this house? Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, kids running up and down those stairs. And now? Now I'm going to sell it, as is. I gestured at the demolished garden, the exposed beams, the chaos I'd created. Let someone else build something new from the wreckage. My phone lit up, my mother calling again. This time I answered. Where are you? She demanded. Home. This isn't funny, Ivy. Your sister needs you. No, I said quietly. She doesn't, and neither do you. I hung up as Eric's car pulled into the driveway. He carried a box of my old photos, the ones I'd left at my parents' house. Your mum dropped these off at my place, he said. Think she was hoping to find you there. I pulled out a photo, Sophie and me as kids, matching Halloween costumes. We used to be inseparable. People change. No, I crumpled the photo. People reveal who they really are. Eliana's phone buzzed. She read the message, then looked at me carefully. Sophie lost the baby. The words hung in the air like the demolition dust. I waited to feel satisfaction, victory, something. Instead, I felt hollow. Ivy, Eric touched my arm. Talk to us. I wanted them to hurt like I hurt. I stared at the ruined house. But this isn't what I wanted. What did you want? I don't know anymore. Headlights swept across the lawn as another car approached. Sophie stepped out, looking pale and small in her hospital gown. You shouldn't be here, Eliana started, but Sophie held up a hand. I need to say something. I stood, facing my sister across the debris-strewn yard. She looked at the destruction around us, then back at me. I deserved this, she said softly. All of it. I destroyed your life because I was jealous. You had everything. The perfect fiancé, the perfect future. I wanted to prove I could take it all away. Sophie, let me finish. She wrapped her arms around herself. I told myself it was love, that Jamie and I were meant to be. But really, I just wanted to win. To be the sister everyone chose for once. They always chose you. No. She shook her head. They needed to take care of me because I was a mess. But you were the strong one, the successful one, the one they were proud of. I looked at the house, really looked at it, the demolished parts, the renovations, the ruins I'd created to make them suffer. I became exactly what they thought I was, I whispered, bitter, vengeful, cruel. We both did. Sophie wiped her eyes. I lost everything today. Jamie, the baby, our parents' trust. But the worst part, I lost you long before that, the day I decided my jealousy was more important than my sister. Eric and Eliana backed away, giving us space. In the growing darkness, Sophie and I stood among the ruins of both our lives. I can't forgive you, I said finally. I know. But I don't want to hate you anymore. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. What happens now? I looked at the bulldozer, still waiting for tomorrow's demolition, at the house that had become a monument to revenge rather than healing. Now, I said, we both start over, separately. Will you ever talk to me again? Maybe. Someday. When it doesn't hurt to look at you. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught, or because everything fell apart, but because I broke something that can never be fixed. I watched her drive away, then turned to Eric and Eliana. Call the contractor. Tell him to stop the demolition. You're keeping the house? Eric asked. No. I took one last look at the Victorian, my dream home, my instrument of revenge, my prison of bitterness. I'm going to restore it, not for Sophie, not for revenge, but for me. Then I'm selling it and moving somewhere new. Running away? Eliana asked. No. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Moving forward, because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's rebuilding yourself from the ruins others left behind.